Hey, what's up, everybody? It's just Charles Sebastian. Welcome you guys to another episode of the DREAMERSPRO show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and where we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we got another interesting show for y'all. But before we get into it, please make sure you like the video, sub to the channel, make sure you follow me on Instagram. My handle is CTABANZ. Let's get into today's topic, y'all. So we've been covering some news this week and most of last week that was centered on the Molly news of her leaving ESPN. We did some shows talking about Stephen A. Smith. And if you guys have noticed, ever since Stephen A. Smith got his new contract extension with ESPN, he has become very vocal on a lot of political issues. Now, for those of you who have been following this particular platform, you guys will know that I'm not a fan of Stephen A. Smith's views at all. The reason I'm not a fan of his views is because I believe he's a grifter. I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. For goodness sake, for as much as this guy parrots conservative talking points, one would have thought he voted for Trump. Guess what? He didn't. He voted for Kamala. That should explain everything you need to know. If you are so pro-Trump and everything that he stands for and all of his policies, etc., why didn't you just go ahead and vote for him? If you listen to Stephen A. Smith, even as he was voting for Kamala, you could see he was gearing towards switching sides. And ever since she lost the election, he's been pro-Trump, and Kamala and these guys did it the wrong way. They did it the wrong way. So if you felt this way about, why don't you just go ahead and why don't you throw your support behind her, right? But I leave that for another day. But some of us have always wondered, given the fact that Stephen A. Smith is a sports guy, and he works for ESPN, how is he going to balance the two, right? Because you could have situations in which he would go out there and espouse some of his political views on various shows like Chris Cuomo's show or Sean Hannity or CNN or wherever else he would go. And I'm like, if he says something wrong or that gets him in trouble, couldn't that backfire on ESPN? Well, folks, it turns out that's not going to be a worry of ESPN because according to executive Burke Magnus, he's essentially saying that no, whatever Stephen A. Smith does has nothing to do with us. Absolutely nothing. I came across an article this morning from Awful Announcing with the following headline. ESPN executive wants viewers educated on clear lines between Stephen A. Smith's sports and political or politics shows. So let's get into what this article had to say. It says ESPN president of content Burke Magnus is thrilled to pay Stephen A. Smith to be the face of the network, at least when he's on the network's own platforms. But when he's off doing shows, his own thing, and weighing in on topics he wants to talk about, what happens when he wants to talk about? That's now SiriusXM, Stephen A. Smith, blah, blah, blah. Then continues on. ESPN's $100 million man recently launched 2 shows on satellite radio platform and afternoon sports shows on Mad Dog Sports Radio and an evening news and politics show on SiriusXM POTUS channel. Adding his own YouTube show, and it's surprising Stephen A. Smith has any vocal cords left to spare by the time the day is over. It then continues on. The new shows are a result of his fresh contract with ESPN that allows him to work with other platforms. And for Magnus, that deal is working exactly as intended. Instead of tackling the day's most controversial issues on ESPN, Stephen A. Smith, the star opinionist is simply turning into Stephen A. Smith. Magnus suggests that lets viewers disassociate the ESPN brand with Smith's political commentary, which he explained on a recent episode of the Sports Media with Richard Deitch's podcast. Now, here's what he had to say. I like the new arrangement better because at least it draws clear lines between what he's doing for us and what he's doing outside of us, Magnus said. And what I mean by that is, in the final years of his previous deal, because of his interests, he would show up on news programs, you name the network, he was all over the place. And at that point, the only way you could ever refer to him, not that it completely eliminates confusion in the new world, but it was ESPN Stephen A. Smith, right? So at least going forward, we have in our box exactly what he does for us, which is he hosts First Takes 240 days a year, or some number around there, and he'll do a handful of other events over the year and other shows for us over the year. That's what he does for us. And outside he'll do his YouTube show. He'll do his radio show on Sirius, that's sports. He'll do his radio show on Sirius, that's politics. He then continues on. So I like the fact that it's compartmentalized now, where he's free to explore those areas. And when he comes back to ESPN, he knows what we want from him. And nobody's better at it, better at that, frankly. If it gets sticky in terms of what he might say or do outside of ESPN, at least we can educate people that off our platform, it's a different profile. The ESPN executive concluded. So what Berg Magnus is saying, who's the head of content at ESPN, is essentially saying is this: whatever he says on the airwaves of ESPN, we take responsibility for. Anything he says off of ESPN has absolutely nothing to do with us. And now this makes sense, because I'm going to hark back to an issue that took place a few months ago, a month or two ago, that was based on some comments that Stephen A. Smith made surrounding the backlash over the reluctance of the administration to release the Epstein files. At the time, a lot of the administration supporters were vocal about the fact that they wanted the White House to release the Epstein files. And then people like Stephen A. Smith came out and essentially said, the only people that are upset about the fact that this list is not being made public are people that have nothing to do with their lives. He even then went on to say that this list could be real or it could not be real. And some of us were like, what? Like, did this guy just say, is this guy not following the facts? And I'm like, how can somebody at ESPN, who's owned by Disney, be allowed to espouse these kind of views? Well, it seems like those things that he said are not connected to ESPN. So ESPN is saying whatever he says that is not on our airwaves has nothing to do with us. Anything he says outside the corridors and the walls of our buildings or whatever it is, that is his business. So if he goes out there and says something crazy on his YouTube show, it ain't got nothing to do with us. If he goes there and says something crazy on Sirius XM radio, it ain't got nothing to do with us. But if he says some of these crazy things on our airwaves, then we can step in and reprimand him. So basically, Stephen A. Smith is basically untouchable. He could go out there and say pretty much whatever the hell he wants. Like recently when he was saying that instead of people standing up for the right to be able to express their views, which is the First Amendment right, he should just say everybody should just accept it. Meanwhile, there's a video of him chastising the previous administration for doing the very same thing. So this is Stephen A. Smith in a nutshell, right? I'm going to leave it to you guys to make of it what you will. I don't take anything that Stephen A. Smith says when it comes to politics seriously at all, because I believe he's a grifter. I think that now he's on the side of the Republicans, and if the Republicans lose power, he's going to jump right back to the left. This is my opinion on it. Whatever you guys think, leave your thoughts in the comments, and we catch you guys on the next show. Peace.